Good afternoon and welcome to a Sunday brunch. I'm your host, Lynda D. Brown. All right, again, happy Sunday. I'm your host, Lynda D. Brown, and it is an absolute pleasure to be here with you today. Bear with me. I'm going to just minimize this real quick. I know we're sharing the screen, and I want to go over to my Facebook page and go ahead and put my link on here so my Facebook group can watch me. Finally, glad we were able to get this going over here on YouTube. We've been looking forward to bringing this over to our YouTube channel and eventually, uh, just one moment, it's a little Sunday brunch. Okay, there we go. Sunday brunch. Our YouTube channel. I didn't think about having this set up before. Let's see if that came through okay. There we go. All right. I tell you, Hangouts, it wasn't that. It was here. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Our YouTube channel. There we go. So it can't be shared. So there we've got it on there now. So for those of you that are used to seeing me on Facebook, just come on and join me right over here on our YouTube page. Again, we're going to be chatting, talking about once again the new Netflix um, mini series or limited series called When They See Us. I really wanted to, we're going to talk about it again on our Tuesday night One Nation show where we have a very diverse audience. But I really wanted to, uh, really, I hope they say what I want them to say. I found a small piece where she's chatting with Democracy's Now, Amy Goodman. So the credit to this goes to Democracy Now. And again, if you don't watch this, this is one of your news channels that you really need to put on your radar. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at, listen to what Ava's saying about When They See Us.
The whole episode, the first episode, to really bring you into the rooms, because you'll hear again and again from the side that opposes the truth of what actually happened. Well, how could you sign something if you didn't do it? Why would you say something if it wasn't true? I think what it's really important to explore and to understand is the power dynamics that happen in a room when you are, poor, black, young, or brown, and you are in a room with a white authority figure who is a police officer who's telling you, do these things and I will help you, do these things and it'll be okay. So it's really not, a difficult math to understand how 1 + 1 equals, these boys basically signing their lives away. And so, the time taken to explore what each boy went through so that they're not just a monolith. They're not a big group called the Central Park Five, and you don't don't know who they are, why they did what they did. Our goal was to bring you into the rooms to recapture these boys' humanity and that of their families. We know that when you incarcerate one person, you incarcerate their family, you incarcerate their community, and very much so, we're incarcerating whole generations of people. And so that detail became really important for me and all the artists involved. They are not the Central Park Five. I came to feel that that was a political moniker. It was something that was given to them by the press. It was something that was given to them by the prosecution. It was something that allowed them to be seen as a gang, as a wolf pack. Real people, real boys with real families, memories, hopes, dreams that were dashed the day that they were captured out of the park.
Who didn't even all know each other.
No, you see that as well. It's stunning. Most people, and the way that it was presented at the time, is this was a wilding pack of boys that went into the park to have fun and assault this woman. But in fact, most of the boys, only 2 of the 5 boys even knew each other. The rest of them didn't even know the names that they were saying. They didn't know who they were implicating. And so they've become brothers in this. They've become kind of crusaders for each other. But at the time, they didn't know one from the other.
Isn't that sad? They did not know one from the other. There was another clip. Let me go ahead and minimize this, where they spoke with
it's so important that people
the actor Joshua Jackson. Let's listen to this. This is Trump, our president. Now remember, these were kids stolen from their lives.
Affects you physically.
This is our new president.
And be open with your doctor about anything you're feeling, physically and emotionally, body and mind.
Sorry about that. I try to bypass these ads.
You better believe that I hate the people that took this girl and raped her brutally. You better believe it. And it's more than anger, it's hatred. And I want society to hate her.
In New York City in the late 80s and early 90s, the case of the Central Park jogger was notorious. In April of 1989, a white woman who had been jogging was found brutally raped and beaten nearly to death in Central Park. Not long after the woman was discovered, 4 black teenagers, 1 Latino teenager, were charged and jailed for the crime. The gruesome case whipped up an unbelievable hysteria throughout the city, the media ginning up fears with headlines about wolf packs and roving gangs and wilding. But the 5 boys, ages 14 and 16, had falsely confessed to the crime after hours of police interrogations. They were later tried, convicted, and sentenced to prison. But vindication for the group, known as the Central Park Five, came in 2002, when a convicted murderer and rapist confessed to the crime. And that confession was then corroborated by DNA. The prison sentences of the Central Park Five were overturned, but by that time they had already served between 5 and 13 years. In 2014, the men were awarded a $40 million settlement from New York City. The story that had gripped the city for years came to a close. And yet one Manhattan resident's obsession with the case continues to this day. Just weeks after the crime was committed in 1989, Donald Trump took out a full-page ad in 4 New York newspapers advocating the return of the death penalty. And when the city awarded the men a settlement in 2014, Trump wrote an editorial in the Daily News calling the settlement a disgrace. And now, even now, as a presidential nominee for the Republican Party, Trump hasn't allowed science or evidence to change his initial reaction to the case. Just this week, Trump said he still considers the men, again, exonerated by the criminal justice system and by DNA scientific evidence, guilty, issuing a statement saying, quote, "They admitted they were guilty. The police doing the original investigation say they were guilty. The fact that case was settled with so much evidence against them is outrageous. The woman, so badly injured, will never be the same." Joining me now is Yusuf Salam. He is one of the men wrongfully convicted in the Central Park jogger case, later exonerated by DNA evidence. And Mr. Salam, first, how old were you when you were arrested, and how much time do you spend in prison?
I was 15 years old when this happened, and I've spent about 7 years in prison, close to 7 years.
Before we get to Donald Trump, I mean, what was it like to go into the system at that age and spend your formative adolescent, early adult years in prison for something you did not do?
You know, to go to prison for a crime like that, that's the absolute worst crime that you can go to prison for. I mean, the only crime that trumps rape is child molestation. And I remember early on, they had these polls that they were doing. They kept saying, you know, what are the inmates going to do when these guys get to prison? You know, untold horrors were mentioned, and we were scared to death. This was a situation where we had to grow up very, very quickly. We had to figure out how we were going to survive and fend for our lives. It was the most horrific event I could have ever imagined.
And so, what is your reaction to a man who is trying to be the most powerful person in the world, arguably, who is on the precipice of possibly being president, saying now, in the last day, issuing a statement that you, despite all evidence, that you are guilty?
You know, when I think about what he represents, and I mean, first of all, what he represents to me is very, very powerful and unfortunate. This blight, this ad, this thing that he did to us, calling for the reinstatement of the death penalty. I always think that had this been the 1950s, we would have become modern day Emmett Tills. They had published our names, our phone numbers, and our addresses in New York City's newspapers. And so what was happening was people began to call us at any time of day or night, you know, threaten us with hate mail and things of that nature. So by Donald Trump taking out this ad, what I think is that he was really calling to see if there was somebody from the darker enclaves of society that would kick in our doors, drag us from our homes, and hang us from trees in Central Park. That's the kind of sick type of justice that they were looking for.
To be clear, this ad, which ran that he paid for, was basically calling for the death penalty for the assailants in this case, who at that point had been identified as juveniles, you among them, basically saying we should kill these children.
Right. You know, he wanted us dead. You know, when you look at the videotapes that he made after the statements that he made after that, it's very, very clear that he said that he wanted to hate us. He wanted us to be afraid. And by us, he was talking directly about the Central Park Five, but he was talking about also the black and brown people that we look at that are being shot down all around the country today. You know, if he's saying that he wants to be the law and order president, and he's talking about policies and practices that have been ruled unconstitutional and unjust, that being stop and frisk in New York City, and he's talking about he wants to bring this type of stuff back. I mean, I'm scared for my life. What happens if this person actually becomes president? Is he going to then go gunning for the Central Park Five because he wanted to murder us back in 1989, and he wants to maybe the same thing that happened to us today? I mean, when we won the lawsuit, one of the things that he said was this was the biggest heist. This was the biggest heist in New York City history. He said that we were going to be rich rapists. And then all of a sudden now we have these video footage of him being produced, of him doing all of these, I just tweeted prior to getting on, I said, this is a dirty old man.
Yeah.
You know, definitely not somebody that we want to be a president of these United States. The type of issues that he presents overwhelmingly causes us, and we need to push far away from him.
Mr. Salam, let me quickly, do you feel he owes you an apology?
I feel he owes us an apology. Do I feel like we will ever get it? I think if I held my breath and waited for him to give us an apology, I would probably pass out and turn blue in the face.
Yeah, I think you're probably right about that. Yusuf Salam, thank you so much, sir, for your time tonight. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
All right. So again, thanks to MSNBC for that very important video. Let's see if I can get this on. We definitely don't need to see all that. So, but I saw another video that I wanted to share with you, and it was really kind of upsetting. Let's see. Well, let's see if I can find the Joshua. Let's see. I might have. Where did I send that? Did I send that to my? And I know, guys, that it's hard to watch this show, but we can't actually hide our faces from this. We can't hide from this because it's still going on. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and show the short version with him on Vibe magazine. He played one of the defense attorneys for the kids.
January 2017.
watch them grow.
Again, this is courtesy of Vibe Magazine video.
And then one night, you look away.
Please, stop right there. Don't resist. Do not resist.
How you guys doing?
Very good. How you doing, Shanique?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah.
I want to first say congratulations on this film, and it is amazing, and I hated it and loved it at the same time. But I guess that was the intention.
Yeah.
So my first question is for you, Mr. Jackson. Yes.
The other Jackson.
Yeah, the other Jackson. As a white man, what blind spots did this film open up for you?
Several, honestly. So it is so easy to be blind as a white man, white person inside of this society to the constant drumbeat of oppression against your skin. And because I don't have to touch it, I don't have to feel it, and the places that I like, and I get to. We were talking about this earlier, so let me put it like this. When I was a young man and I was going through my teenage craziness, right? And I had my interactions with the police, and I, going through that phase, I was given the grace to have those interactions and have the repercussions be fairly minor, reasonably minor. And then I was allowed to graduate to the next level. And I was allowed to graduate into being a grown man, and a certain respect was then conferred on me. And I remember the shift of going from being a suspect young man into being like, oh, I'm in my early 20s now, and I don't actually, like, I can pass by a bunch of cops and they give me the like head nod and a smile, and that's new. And then, frankly, success and fame changes that as well. And so the blind spots for me were just being reminded again that, like, you can't take black off. There is no moment for you that you don't have to deal with the reality of how you are being treated by the broader society. Even if it's not in that moment, it is a constant underlying, like, white noise of your life. And so that was, to me, I think the biggest blind spot that I felt coming out of this was just being reminded again, like, for these 5 young men, this was the backdrop of their life, even when they weren't specifically engaged with it. And in this moment, their entire lives and innocence and their youth was stolen from them just simply for the fact of their existence.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That was an amazing response. My next question.
All right. There was one by the Young Turks, and this makes a lot of sense because I'm going to show you something. We just had, unfortunately, an episode. We just had a murder that was solved that happened years ago, and we're going to talk about that next. Let me just jot that down so I won't forget it. All right, because I want to kind of tie together what we're seeing with this, and this was the Young Turks. They have a new channel. The victims of his name was Mateos Reyes, and I want to say that was on the Young Turks. They have a new channel. Okay, listen. First victim of the Central Park, because here's what we have not heard a lot of talk about is the fact that the same sex crime team that put these young boys in jail, they were actually aware of Mr. Reyes and what he was doing. They knew his MO, but once they had the boys, they just stopped looking. And so I hope they go into this, and I'm going to have to see if I can find that clip with
First victim of the Central Park rapist tells of the moment she identified the man who attacked her. A woman who was raped by a man who became known as the Central Park Jogger has been detailing her horrific experience to detectives in New York. Masha's Reyes assaulted and raped a young woman jogging through Central Park in April 1989. But several months earlier, he attacked another woman inside an Upper East Side church. The woman, who has been identified only as J, told officers of her experience in documents released by the city last week. Her ordeal began shortly after walking into the Church of Heavenly Rest just off 5th Avenue and East 90th Street on her lunch break on September 21st, 1988. I thought it would be a peaceful 10-15 minutes, she told detectives at the time in documents seen by the Daily News. She sat in a pew and prayed for around 10 minutes, and it wasn't until she got up to leave that things suddenly took a terrifying turn. An Hispanic teen, wearing a football jersey, asked her very politely if she worked at the church. I said no, she recalled. He nodded, oh, like okay, and walked up the aisle. Jay thought nothing of the encounter until as she was walking out of the church when she was suddenly grabbed from behind. A man later identified as Reyes placed one hand over her mouth and another around her neck and told her to stay quiet if she wanted to stay alive, according to her official statement. He told me he had a knife, she explained. He then grabbed me and pushed me down a flight of stairs. After handing over $172 in her wallet, Reyes choked her while demanding she hand over all of her jewelry, including a gold ring from her dead mother. He started to choke me harder and harder, she said, until I felt as if I was going to die. I felt blackness creeping in. Eventually, he stopped choking her and told her to get undressed with the intention of raping her. Jay tried to talk him out of the idea and said that she was suffering from an infection. Reyes held a knife in the woman's face and told her to stay downstairs. He left with my money, jewelry, and clothes, she said. I was left with my socks, handbag, and tote bag. She only stayed downstairs for a minute before going back up where she found her clothes lying in a pile. Incredibly, her case remained unsolved for another 14 years until 2002 when she recognized the man from a story in New York Magazine in October 2002. That's the guy. That's the guy, she said. Reyes had confessed in 2002 to rape and beating of Central Park jogger Trisha Mealy. His crime was initially blamed on 5 teenage boys who became known as the Central Park Five. The Central Park Five reached a $41 million settlement with the city in 2014. Reyes was also tied to 9 other rapes around the city, with Jay's attack appearing to be his first.
Right.
Jay's written account of her ordeal is among 200,000 pages of documents and 95 depositions that have been posted online by the city's law department.
Now, again, there's one. Let me see if I can just find that one. It's kind of short, but it goes into more details, but it talks about this very same issue. While they were so busy, railroading these young boys, just stealing their childhood so that they could make a name for themselves, this man was steady hurting people. Young Turks, okay. And it's just unbelievable. Let's see if I can find. Video.
This weekend was the second.
It's just really sad. Now I know that they have switched over, like I said, to some other channels. But again, this is something that we really have to pay attention to, guys. Why? Because like I said, it's still going on. And it's gotten even worse. They've actually taken it to another level where they no longer have to worry about getting them into court. They just shoot and kill them right there in the cars when they're stopping them on the street. So it's just something that we're going to just have to do about this. Let me see if I can find them on their other channels. All right, hold on, guys. Because I know that they had switched this over. Let's see if I can find it on my history here. Because it was the 2 ladies talking about it, and it was a really good discussion. Okay, since oh yeah, I'm trying not to find the more this is cute though, but I have to show you this. I shared this on I shared this on my Facebook channel, and then I saw that I found it on CNN. This is courtesy of, let me see if I can find it on my history here, because it was the 2 ladies talking about it, and it was a really good discussion. Okay, since this is cute though, but I have to show you this. I shared this on my Facebook channel, and then I saw that I found it on CNN. This is courtesy of Lou Jers. Listen,
Did you understand it though? No.
this is why it's important for daddies to have the young boys and girls to have their daddies.
Not this one. This is Instagram now. Yeah, that's the last one. That's what I was wondering. I don't know what they're gonna do next season because they did some stuff this time.
I think they were watching Game of Thrones.
Oh yeah, yeah. Right. Don't bring that again. You know what I'm saying? Don't do the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I think that. Yeah. Like go somewhere else with that, but don't break it here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's what I said. He was like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, what in the world? Don't do that here. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Really? I thought the same thing. We think a lot alike, huh? Oh, that's crazy. Right.
Is that just the most adorable thing that you've ever seen? All right, but let's get back to where we were with this again, and we really don't want to. I just really want to get to that part where they were saying that the police and the prosecutors were actually aware of Mr. Reyes, the actual animal that did this. Let's see. Let's see if I can find it with that without me having. I'm not even gonna. I refuse to play her story. Well, I guess you know what. All right, let's be fair and listen to what now. This is the
When I was working on my first
prosecutor.
sexual assault cases in 1973, very, very few prosecutions were even brought in any state that were about sexual assault.
This is
because the laws
courtesy of
made it so
Makers.
hard to do that. So the example that I like to give was an early case that I tried to handle in 1973 of a woman who had walked out of Grand Central Station, getting off a train in the dark one evening, early evening, 9, 10 o'clock. And she was accosted at knife point by a man who took her behind a pillar of Vanderbilt Avenue, and he demanded her wallet. And she gave him the wallet. So that's a knife point robbery in the first degree. He then pushed her back further and he said, get down on the ground, take your clothes off. And he raped her. This was at the time when we had the 3-point corroboration requirement. So this woman had nobody who had identified him beside herself. We didn't know what DNA was in those days, so there's no independent evidence that she was, that it was this man. The second piece of corroboration, the sexual nature of the attack, was proved. She did go to a hospital, and there was evidence that there was seminal fluid, but not linked to anybody. And thirdly, when he was arrested, he did not have the knife with him. He was arrested at his job. So the jury was not allowed to hear the case because 2 of the 3 elements of the crime were not corroborated. She was allowed to take the stand, and she could testify that's the man that robbed me, but she was never allowed to say that then he took me behind the pillar. And she broke down on the stand, sobbing in a way that I'm sure most jurors thought was entirely inappropriate for a robbery that took 2 minutes. I mean, what she was sobbing, of course, was the fact that it was the rape on the pavement outside Grand Central Station, and she wasn't allowed by law to tell the jury that had happened. And that happened to me over and over again, to my colleagues. Every day, the criminal justice system in America offered no recourse to victims of sexual violence until these laws changed.
Wow. So she just really sees. Let's watch this because we're. This is another thing because I'm going to go into something like I said that
Hi, my name's
that
Petra
just
Hess from
happened here.
PainterPicks.com. Last year, I was able to make about 300.
There we go. I apologize, guys.
Okay, so you guys have this night. Various stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
You guys leave, and then the arrests happen afterwards.
Yeah.
But on that night,
Mm-hmm.
A woman gets brutally beaten and raped.
Yeah, that's correct. Yes, indeed.
Now, just to put it in kind of a context, things like this were already happening in Central Park. There was I guess a string of assaults and rapes already in Central Park.
Yeah, the guy was known as the East Side Rapist.
Okay, so the East Side Rapist was running around Central Park and raping people, but people don't know who he is.
Yeah.
At this point. Okay. So then, a couple days after the incident, you guys start getting arrested.
Mm-hmm.
When they arrest you, what do they charge you with? Or what do they tell you that you're getting arrested for?
Originally, for me, because I got arrested that night, it was misdemeanor charges. So it was like trespassing, menacing, riot. It was stuff that was supposed to go to family court. So originally, we was given disappearance tickets to appear in family court, and we had to wait for our parents to come pick us up. And it wasn't until they found the jogger in like those wee hours of the morning that they thought she was going to die because they saw the condition and the state that she was in. And so they called the Homicide North Detective Squad, who came in and said, all right, well, let us question the boys, those that you have in custody.
Yeah. Okay. And she was brutally beaten and raped. I guess like her skull was fractured and so forth. I mean, I guess at one point they weren't even sure if she was going to live.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't expect her to live at all.
They didn't expect her to live. That's why they called a homicide squad to come on in because they thought she was going to die.
We got to remember too, from the reports that everybody knows about, this lady lost about 3/4 of her blood. And it was amazing in terms of that whole scenario as well, because then when they arrested us, even when they arrested those of us afterwards, them telling us, hey, we need y'all to get your clothes that y'all wore that night and things of that nature, none of us having a drop of blood on us, nobody's skin. I mean, she obviously put up a fight, but, the way that they were trying to make the story sound, especially with Kevin Richardson, was that they tried to make the people believe that she had scratched him. But then when you tested the fingernails and did forensics and all of that stuff, nothing matched any one of us. But they still pinned it on us because, I always said that it was really more sexy for it to be 5, people of color brutalizing a young, probably wealthy investment banker at that time.
Right. Who happens to be white, blonde, pretty.
Yeah.
So it made for some very compelling headlines.
Definitely.
Okay. So Raymond, let's go ahead and start with you.
Mm-hmm.
You get arrested. You get brought to the precinct.
Uh-huh.
At what point did they start questioning you about this?
Well, we was there until early in the morning. I think Kevin was the first one that they took into the room, and then I was second. And so you're talking like 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. So by that time we was already there the whole night. And the line of questioning starts off very calm. It's like, just what happened that night? Tell us what happened. And so, I go through the story of who I was with, who I came with, what I saw that night, and that was it. And then it was like, well, wait a minute, what about this woman? And I go, what woman? And they say, the woman who got raped. And I'm like, whoa, I don't know nothing about that. I never saw that. I don't know about that. And that line of questioning goes on for hours. And then I had my grandmother there who was staying with me at the time, and she spoke very little English, but she can't carry conversation. She just knew a lot of curse words in English, right? And so they had to translate between me and her. And so I guess that became problematic for them. And so it was like, all right, we got to get her out the room. And that's when it starts. And by this time, you're under, 3-4 hours of questioning, of not knowing what's going to happen. The pressure is just so great. And it gets even greater as the questioning goes on, And so for me,
they started where they started to do the intimidation tactics, right? They had an officer come in, he'll knock at the door, he'll bring my grandmother out, and he'll talk to her in Spanish. And while they got her outside, that's when they started to work on me. So, they'll bring an officer in who's real tall, he gives me this look, threatens me, what the fuck are you looking at? At that point, I'm about 5'6", 120 pounds soaking wet. And it just builds from there. It builds from there until they get me to a point that I feel like I'm so helpless, And for me, that point came because with the officers coming in and out the room, it happened about 3 times. The third time is when the officer who's actually asking me the questions, where he just flips and he's like, I'm tired of this shit. He bangs on the table and he reaches for me. And at that point, I feel like I'm not going to make it out the piece. I feel like I'm going to die, right? And at that same moment, a detective who comes in the room, sitting in the back, stops him. Starts yelling at him, cursing at him. What the fuck are you doing? You crazy? Get out the room. Kicks him out the room. And at that moment, I feel like he saved my life, right? And he sits there and he goes, Raymond, you a good kid. I know you ain't do this, but she got these guys in the other precincts and they saying you did it. I need your help. Man. And I'm like, so what the hell am I going to tell this dude? Because I don't know. I don't know the facts. I wasn't there. I didn't see shit. But what he does is he gives me a lifeline. He pulls out a picture of Kevin Richardson. He lays it on the table. And he says, you see this kid right here? Do you know him? I say, no. And he said, well, this is Kevin. You see the scratch on his face? That came from the jogger fighting him off. Now we know he's going to jail, but I don't want you to go to jail. So I need you to help me out. Give me something. And then he just sits back and he just looks at me and just waits. Man. And at that moment, as a 14-year-old kid, what are you doing? We're trying to figure out a lie to tell, something just to stop the pressure from overcoming. And
okay, I mean, this is classic good cop, bad cop.
Good cop, bad cop.
Wait, I want to just interject there because I knew that piece was going to come up in terms of the classic good cop, bad cop thing. But when you are in there and it's happening to you, TV can't paint that picture.
TV can't paint.
So when we see stuff like that happen on TV, I usually tell folks that's about 50% of the reality of what really goes on. Like Raymond didn't think that the guy was faking. He thought the guy was about to kill him and come across that table. Yeah. But they probably scripted that stuff. Hey, listen, I'm gonna be the bad guy. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You make sure I don't go too far. You know what I'm saying? And for us, we scared to death.
I kind of thought the same thing when I saw the documentary, that they were literally playing good cop, bad cop with these kids. It was really horrendous because they absolutely knew that these babies had never been in trouble before. Family members not in trouble. These were kids living the kind of lives that we were told that we're supposed to be able to live. And it did not happen.
Okay. So at no point do you ask for a lawyer or anything else like that? I guess you just don't even know about stuff like that at that point.
They read the Miranda rights, but at that moment, you're just so afraid, and it's the fear of the unknown that it doesn't even compute for a 14-year-old kid. You know what I'm saying? Unless you have that experience and you've been through before, you don't know nothing. You know what I'm saying? Or unless a parent is there to say, hold on, wait a minute, I think we need an attorney. Right. But if it's just me and him, he can read the damn Declaration of Independence, and I'm just like, all right, whatever.
Okay, man. So at the end of
I'm gonna let this go because there's another clip I want to play. I just found it, and I'm gonna go ahead and try to end this right at about 4. But again, here's what I want you to think as you listen to all of this. If you have kids or grandkids that are in their early teens, what if these were your kids or your grandkids and this happened to them? And it's still happening, guys. It's actually worse, like I said. So what do we do to stop it? So let's talk about the fact that when you're so busy trying to catch, just to try to railroad some kids, instead of getting out there and actually doing your job, this is what happens. Because I think what the sad thing is, they took the easy way out. Okay. Because they knew the kids were easy marks. They had more information about, let's see, here it is, Survivors of the Real. Here we go. They had more information about the real rapist.
All right, this is
And they failed to
probably
act.
my
Listen.
favorite story of the morning. This is a story I really wanted to be able to talk about. It's a follow-up to the Exonerated Five. You're right, because we should stop calling them the Central Park Five. But it's another aspect of the story. You all know the story. We've talked about it. We've talked about it repeatedly. We were just talking about it yesterday. But I want to keep talking about it because I want this information and the issues, the many issues surrounding this problem. I want it fresh in everyone's mind. But so a pretty amazing story in The Cut yesterday actually takes a look at another set of victims in this bubble of injustice. Okay, this is actually all of the women who may not have been raped or attacked had investigators focus their search on the right attacker. And one woman, a mother of 3, she was pregnant at the time, one woman who may still be alive. So just when I just get right into it, it's since, this wasn't about one young, white, affluent woman raped while jogging in Central Park, but about 9 young women, some affluent, some less so, assaulted, raped, or murdered all around the Upper East Side. The story crafted within hours of that April 19 night was the splintered mirror image of the real narrative that the man who attacked the Central Park jogger was a serial rapist and murderer who struck before and after. And we kind of put together a timeline because I want you to see exactly what we're talking about here. So the real attacker, the serial rapist and murderer, Reyes, that's his name. And these are his victims, the survivors of his attack. So in September 21st of 1988, this is his first known victim. He attacked Jackie Herbach in September of 1988. And 2 down, there's Trisha, the Central Park survivor. So the longer part of the list happens after her attack. Right. Of course. So if Lynda Fairstein potentially wasn't so obsessed with manipulating the facts in this situation and essentially railroading these 5 little boys, maybe someone's mother could still be alive. Absolutely. I went to her Twitter because I saw that people were tweeting her, and I was fascinated with the fact that CBS still employs her and that she's still out there because she's a criminal and to me and all of the people that were involved in this. But that's what happens a lot. It happens while people of color are being unjustly accused of crimes. It gives free rein to those people who are actually committing the crimes to go out, because this became such a big, such a big media deal. So unfortunately, all of those people should be suing. It shouldn't just be the exonerated 5 men, but the victims the people who continue to suffer as a result of this, crucifixion, this public humiliation. And it was like the Salem witch trial. Like these witch trials, the way that they behave towards those children. And listen, when people come for Lynda Fairstein, which I fully support, everybody involved, no one employed their consciousness at any moment to say this is not okay. They're all guilty, and they should all feel the wrath and the karma of being part of a conspiracy to tragically interrupt the lives of 5 children. They were children. And the things that happened to them as a result of this, they are the victims. But yes, all of the other people that suffered, because law enforcement, and this is a perfect example of what we talked about earlier, law enforcement, local government, the people above those cops that all participated in this. And so speaking of exactly what you're talking about, just to show just specifically how many issues were going on here, the second victim, the second woman, her name is being withheld. This is what happened in her case, and this is 2 days before the Central Park attack. So police say she not only identified her attacker as a Hispanic man, but called attention to the fresh stitches on his chin. So when the detective checked local hospital records, he found that a man fitting that description had been given stitches at Metropolitan Hospital, and the man's name was Matias Reyes. The woman left New York not long after the attack and stopped talking to police. The detective assigned to this case was transferred to a different unit, The unsolved case was just closed within months, and Reyes was never brought in for questioning. Of course, because that was an agenda point. They were going in to...
Okay, let me say this before they say it exactly. Sloppy police work. Why? Because when you're lazy and incompetent, it's a lot easier to just take the easy victims. And they knew that these kids were victims. They knew that that was, as the guy said in the clip, is it snowing outside? It must be Christmas. Because they knew that they had a gift just landed in their lap with these kids being here, having no prior issues with the judicial system, never been arrested, never been inside a police station, did not have any parents or any lawyers there to assist them. And but you know what? I tell you what you do in the dark. Let's finish.
They said we have to have criminals. These guys fit it. In the movie, she kept saying these animals, these animals. That's how that happens a lot. And but the two arguments don't fit though, because in the same department, in the same system, one guy, you have a description, you don't even bring him in and ask him a question. No. And then, when days later, you go out and just to corral little black boys in Harlem. Because this wasn't about justice. This was political. Right. And it was a person who had so many L's in her book that she needed a win. And she was going to get that win at any cost. And that's why I tell you that you have to be just as vested in your local government as you are in the federal government, because these are the people, the sheriffs, the DAs, the public defenders, all of those people conspired, to see this because they wanted, they thought about it politically. They thought about it. The people are all disposable and dispensable to these people. Everybody is a currency when you're poor and then you're a person of color. This was never about justice and bringing someone to justice. It was about people's records, people appearing a certain way, people looking like they accomplished something, and they're a bunch of losers. They should all be ashamed of themselves. All those men that sat there bullying those little boys, a bunch of losers.
Right.
Absolutely. 100%. Just to give you an idea of how this man was finally caught, Reyes, his last victim, after the attack, it's brutal, it's violent, it's horrifying. She was actually able to get away from him and run down the stairs in her apartment building to her superintendent's door. She ran down 3 flights of stairs with him basically right behind her. And a building porter and another tenant saw the man in the lobby, and before he could flee, they got to him and pinned him on a couch for 15 minutes until police arrived. And I just put that in perspective, just thinking about the fact that I'm so glad that, but unfortunately, this had to happen after this woman was attacked. And after so many other women were attacked, when someone could have brought this man in for questioning. Yeah, he was a white passing Hispanic, and he did not fit the profile of what they did.
Did you hear what she said? I'm going to play that back. She said he's a white-looking Hispanic. So he did not fit the profile that they wanted to use to perpetrate this railroading of these kids. So let's listen to that again. But she's Latino, so she knows, right?
When someone could have brought this man in for questioning. Yeah, he was a white passing Hispanic, and he did not fit the profile of what they did, what they wanted to be the demon in this story. Right. And that is why you constantly hear the word animal when referring in the dehumanization of the young black boys, because that's what happens. It's the dehumanization is part of the process of the oppression, and that he didn't fit the narrative that they were trying to put out. Those kids in Central Park that were, beating up bikers or whatever, which is not something that is specific to black people. That's something absolutely nobody even knows who was there. We do know that one of the boys that was arrested had a huge slash on his face after an officer slammed him in the head with the helmet. Oh yeah. Yeah. That makes it easier. Yeah. You keep calling them animals, and you don't want to see them at their humanity. That's why I love the title of it, is because it makes it easier to beat up on them, falsely accuse them, kill them, because you don't see them as people. Yeah. Ugh. I think I feel sorry for those victims, because absolutely. Can you imagine one of the women in there, and we didn't get deep into it, but the woman who lost her life, her 2 7-year-old, 6 and I think 7-year-old sons, and baby And she was pregnant at the time as well. We're all, these kids were in the house and she had them go in the other room. And so they had to experience this. They come out and see their mother all bloody and they're terrified, running and trying to find out how to call 911. And their mom passed away. And just to think that, maybe this didn't have to happen.
Exactly.
And Lynda, that police department, that city government, they should be compensating all of those victims because of their loss, because of their blind spot, because of their intentional, hatred towards people of color. All these people suffered.
Yeah, absolutely. And remember, I mentioned at the start of the show, I wanted to talk about something else that unfortunately, let's see if I can find this. We had this happen just recently. Let's see if we have it on YouTube yet. Yeah. Okay. Now, this happened back in I think it was around the same time.
Charges are officially filed in the kidnapping, killing, and sexual assault of Angie Hausman 25 years ago.
25 years ago.
Brought us exclusive details about the suspect's violent criminal past last night, and she's here now with new information about this horrific case, Mandy. It is heartbreaking. It really is. I can now give out the name of the man who we told you about last night, who is now officially charged with one of the most heinous crimes our area has ever seen. 61-year-old Earl Cox is the person police say matched with the DNA found on Angie Hausman's body. Recent tests made this startling discovery. Cox's DNA is in a federal registry because he's in prison in Butner, North Carolina. He's been in and out of prison for sexually abusing children his entire life. He grew up in St. Louis and lived just a few streets away from where Hausman lived and got off her school bus that fateful day in 1993. St. Charles County Prosecutor Tim Lomar, during a press conference today, described the graphic details on how her body was found.
Angel's nude body was found partially covered with snow.
She was
her 9
years old.
Duct tape, except for her nose. Her hands were handcuffed behind her back, and her left arm was bound to a tree. There were deep lacerations to both her left and her right wrist, and also to her right thigh. The duct tape around her wrist appeared to have been put there so as to slow the bleeding.
Lomar says the technology wasn't available to test fabric that contained dye prior to 2017. They tested a piece of Angie's underwear that was found in a bag near her body. Lomar also said there will likely be additional child sex abuse charges. These filed out of St. Louis County for a case involving Cox from the late 80s in Overland. And he also says there could be more suspects and more arrests. But bottom line today, Shirley and Sandy, there was a great sense of relief in that room at the press conference. I was there for a lot of those longtime investigators who have never stopped looking.
Okay, I'm going to stop her there. Sense of relief. Okay, here's what's really crazy. Let me see if I can find what I just saw earlier today. And it's just probably going to take me to, I think I saw it. Let's see. Where they were talking about okay, here's what I was looking at. And I'm going to show you how I'm going to tie this horrific case into what we're seeing on when they see us. Okay, and those in the St. Louis area will know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh my goodness, what are you doing here? Oh, we can't have that. Okay, let me go back over here. What the heck? Okay. Bank logs is what? So you see what kind of craziness we're dealing with, guys? And I'm not going to call this Oh, come on. You're not going to let me out of here? Oh, my goodness. Look at this. So you see what I'm dealing with? Google Chrome critical error. All right. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it since it doesn't want me to share my stuff here. Let's see. Can I go over here? Let's see. All right. So I'll go back here. Now, I wanted to say this. They were also wondering why the same, because this man actually lived very close to this young lady, 25 years. But at the same time where all this was going on, I was just telling my co-host on my One Nation Network TV show that the area where this happened in the St. Anne, Breckenridge Hill, Overland, that area, used to be a very thriving shopping area. I mean, I didn't live that far from it growing up, and coming over here in that area to go to Northwest Plaza was always a great thing. And I tell you, it was just mind-boggling to me that all of a sudden they just started harassing black shoppers, stopping them, pulling them over for anything. And to the point now where after a while we just stopped coming over there, and the city just all of them, the little municipalities, just died. Well, do you think it could have been the same thing if our police officers were more focused on actually solving real crimes instead of harassing black citizens, so that way they can meet their quotas with the number of tickets that they need met every month? And this is what was shown in the Justice Department report that Eric Holder did when he was Attorney General under President Barack Obama. And I'm going to tell you, since they ceased with a lot of that, there are a lot of these municipalities over here that are really, really struggling, really struggling. Well, I tell you guys, I'm going to go ahead and call it a day because, as you can see, my computer decided to stop. Not sure what's going on, but we're going to go ahead and just call it a day. Thank you so much for joining us on, let's see if I can just close that out. There we go. There we go. Okay. So I'm back. I do apologize for that. So I hope you got a chance to at least download it or save it in case they decide to ban it. I'm going to definitely put it on my Patreon page. So I'll go ahead and share my Patreon log page information too, so you guys can see it there. Just come on and become a Patreon member. The very minimum is $3 a month, gives you access to not only all the stuff that I share, but also copies of my book. So I will chat with you later. Thank you so much for joining us on the Author Chat Show. Since I got that off of there, let's go back and do my little intro that my co-host made for me. All right. All right. And again, we'll see you guys on here next week. Don't forget to join us on Tuesday for One Nation Network TV. We start around 7-ish on Facebook. Mondays, don't forget our DCS show. Okay. The Man Cave show, they start around 7, 8 o'clock. They talk about all stuff manly. We have a special guest that will be appearing on, I don't think I have any of her stuff with me. Let's see. I don't want to get that stupid page back up, so I'm just going to stay here. But we have a special guest coming on our show July the 2nd from Kylie's Unique Pearls, and it's really great. So we're going to do like a little watch party there, and she's going to show you how she actually sells these pearls that she actually gets out of the She actually gets them out of the oyster. It's really amazing. So I'm gonna wait and purchase mine so that way you can see her open the crab and I can get pick out my color and all that good stuff of the pearl. Let's see. Thank you. I want to remind our shows with One Universal Production Company, which is affiliated with the Sunday Brunch Show, is also sponsored by Spoken Word Press Publishing. You can find all of our books. If you want the paperback book, go right to our website, which is onenationnetworktv.com. You can also get a copy of our audio books and our ebooks also on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and the iTunes store. Okay. Also, Joni's Pizza. If you enjoy pizza, especially if you live in that Soulard area, check out Joni's Pizza right over there on Russell. She has some of the best pizza on the South Side. All right, that's our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you back here next week on Sunday Brunch.